All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thanks to everyone for joining today's Transcelerate CPT 101 Introduction to the Common Protocol Template webinar. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy days to dial in and hear about one of our Transcelerate solutions. My name is Gloria McHugh. I work for Accenture. I am a Transcelerate project manager, and I'll be introducing the speakers and ushering you through the webinar today. So before I get started, I'd like to make a few introductions of the folks that you'll be hearing from on the phone. Julie Day, who works as a program director for Transcelerate, unfortunately is unable to join us today, but we also have Mark McErath, Director and Head of Global Clinical Development Standards and Training Excellence at Merck, Kirsten Young, Associate Director, Medical Writing Quality at Pfizer. As I said, I'm Gloria McHugh, a Transcelerate Project Manager. Also joining us is Stacy Teagan, a Transcelerate Project Manager with Accenture, and Etsuko Asaka, a Senior Manager and Asia-Pac Subject Matter Expert from Pfizer, will be joining us as well. So before we get started, I would like to cover a few of the logistics for the webinar. As you probably heard when you dialed into the webinar, all participants will be muted for this call. You can use your computer or your phone to listen to the presentations. You can use the orange and white arrow in the top right of your screen to reduce your GoToWebinar control panel for a better view of the presentation. That would be just on your computer. And you can also submit a question to the presenters if you'd like. You should see a questions box in your control panel. So you would type your question into the questions panel and click send. And we'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. If you have any other questions, feedback, or technical issues, please send them to events@transceleratebiopharmainc.com. So before we get started, I'd like to also mention that we will be using some polling during today's webinar. So let's test out the functionality of the poll. I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, and you'll answer it on your computer. All of our polls are voluntary and anonymous, so you don't have to participate. But please, if you would like to test out the functionality, can you please let us know what your favorite color is? And it looks like the options are blue, red, orange, and pink. And it looks like we have about 80% of the people on the phone have voted so far, so thank you very much. And it looks like the answer is 50% blue, 8% red, 17% orange, and 25% pink. So thank you very much, everyone, for voting, ensuring that the functionality works and everyone can hear us okay. All right. So I'm going to cover the agenda. We'll spend about 10 minutes. I'll provide you with a little bit of an overview of Transcelerate in case you're not familiar with who we are and what we do. And then I'll turn it over to Mark and Kirsten, who will cover the details of the Common Protocol Template, rationale, development, and benefits, and as well as the CPT structure and the core template and libraries. Before we get started, I also want to cover some ground rules. We want to make sure that everyone's aware that the participation is voluntary and is using all of the Transcelerate assets and tools. You don't have to identify what company you work for, and we would ask that you not discuss specific things like what vendors, sites, or CROs you're using or not using, any issues you may be having with any vendors, sites, or CROs, your long-term development plans, or anything related to cost. And we can't answer any questions about vendors, costs of using or implementing the Transcelerate assets and tools, or which member companies are using the assets and tools. All right, so we'll get started in the presentation. So before we get started, we also wanted to just ask another poll. If you can let us know where you're located, if you can select on your computer, are you located in North America, South America, Europe, Asia Pac, or Middle East and Africa? And it looks like we've got about 90% of the participants on the phone have voted so far. So thank you very much. And it looks like we have 59% of the people on the phone today are calling in from Asia Pac, and 41% are calling in from North America. So thank you very much, everyone, for answering that poll. All right. So as I said, Julie Day, unfortunately, is not able to join us today, so I'll be walking you through a little bit of an overview of Transcelerate. So Transcelerate is a not-for-profit entity created specifically to foster collaboration in the research and development space. And really the shared vision of all of the members of Transcelerate is to really help improve the health of people around the world by trying to accelerate and simplify the research and development of innovative new therapies. Transcelerate was launched back in 2012, and at that time we had 10 member companies, and we had 5 initial initiatives that we worked on. And there have been many major milestones over the course of the last almost 7 years now. But a big one was in 2016 when BioCelerate was founded. And BioCelerate is a wholly owned subsidiary of Transcelerate with a focus specifically on preclinical research. And so today we have 19 member companies, Novartis being our most recent joining member. We also have more than 25 initiatives, including 4 that focus on pharmacovigilance. We have 22 countries in our network, and we're looking to expand that as well with our member company country network. And we've also engaged with 13 health authorities around the world to ensure that we're gaining health authority perspectives as well. And so really what we try to do is make sure that our initiatives support our strategic pillars of making sure that we have breadth and depth. We have over 30 solutions being delivered across 25 initiatives across 3 strategic priorities. Again, we try to create a culture of collaboration with an effective and proven governance structure to really increase the ease and the desire to collaborate across the industry and the ecosystem. And we're also looking to facilitate future platform trials. We believe that more than 12 of our initiatives will deliver solutions that facilitate those platform trials of the future for the pharmaceutical industry. And you can also see at the bottom, DataCelerate is really an enterprise-level technology platform that is really going to help us enable data sharing across a number of data sharing solutions that we're developing. The reach of our global membership is continuing to expand. This slide shows our member companies who contribute resources and help create solutions across all of our initiatives. On any given day, we have over 1,000 people from those member companies participating across initiatives and really helping to drive the creation of those solutions. In addition, we have a lot of external collaboration that we work on as well. We certainly don't want to be a single stakeholder organization. We know that we have many stakeholders who contribute to the work that we do, and so we collaborate in many ways across the ecosystem with many different types of stakeholders who bring a unique perspective to the work that we do. We work with investigator sites, research and the CRO community, patient advocacy groups, health authorities, and many other associations. These are some examples, but certainly not an exhaustive list. Our goal is really to collaborate, foster that commitment to partnerships, and support data sharing across the ecosystem. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mark McErath, who's the Director of Global Clinical Development, Standards and Training for Merck.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Let's start our discussion on these topics by looking at the drivers for a common protocol template. So why exactly did we set out to create the CPT? At many professional meetings for some time, we've been hearing a variety of voices commenting on how sponsors are designing and implementing trials. This slide summarizes some of the specific input that we heard at a DIA meeting in 2015. Investigators spoke of the increasing complexity of our protocols and the fact that every sponsor just seems to do things differently. This further complicates study execution for any site that is working with multiple sponsors. Sometimes a simple choice of words can also be of concern. We heard from patient advocacy groups that there was a sensitivity to the use of the word subject in many of our protocols. This reminded us that the trial participants themselves would also be a key stakeholder group that we must consider. A key health authority perspective was expressed by an FDA colleague who reminded us that we would need to go beyond establishing just common text. To achieve CDISC compliance, we would need to ensure end-to-end traceability of data from source to final data sets. So with all that in mind, we set out to develop a common protocol template that would offer benefits to a number of stakeholders, both in the near term and also into the future. I'd like to describe that a little bit on this slide as we unveil the sections. Starting with sponsor, a common template could reduce redundancy and drive therapeutic standards, thereby enabling operational efficiency and improved data quality. Over time, common content could be reused to automate downstream processes and would also enable improved collaboration across sponsors. Sites would immediately recognize streamlined and better organized protocol content and see a reduced burden when working across multiple studies. In a future state, a common protocol template could allow for harmonization of other study documents and processes that stem from the protocol. Institutional review boards or ethics committees would enjoy the same benefits as our sites. Finding the same information in the same location in protocols written across multiple sponsors could ultimately facilitate the review of protocols. Over time, common content would also support easier automation of IRB submissions. Turning to the patients, from their perspective, some of these immediate benefits to sites and IRBs would translate to increased efficiency in study startup and improved quality in ongoing trials for participants. In the future, the automation of downstream processes beyond the protocol could allow sponsors to get medicines to patients faster. Finally, regulatory authorities will see near-term benefits in terms of streamlined, more consistent protocols that are therefore easier to review. And over time, more commonality and increased use of automation and data standards will enable easier interpretation and comparison of results, and could ultimately allow for more efficient reviews by the regulators. Progress to date on the CPT includes the development of a human-readable template document. This will enable sites, reviewers, ethics committees, regulators, all those important stakeholders, to find the same information in the same place and have it mean the same thing. The template itself consists of a core of common content supported by a series of libraries appropriate for a given study type or disease area. Critical protocol level content has been aligned to the Data Standards Project, which is a collaboration between Transcelerate and the Coalition for Accelerating Standards and Therapies, or CFAS. The alignment of objectives and endpoints and procedures is a critical element of this document-based solution. This human-readable template paves the way to evolving to a machine-readable protocol, where content can be reused and metadata drives downstream processes, introducing the possibility of really establishing the protocol as a digital platform with analytic trial design, role-based access to protocol information, etc. In both the document-based environment as well as the digital environment, it will be critical to reconnect certain processes and develop critical study components in parallel rather than serially. For example, the ECRF, the Statistical Analysis Plan, or SAP. At this time, the template core will support trials in any therapeutic area. As a first step toward enabling data standards, disease-specific libraries have been created with common endpoint definitions based on the CDISC Therapeutic Area User Guide, or TAUG. From the start, the Common Protocol Template team has maintained a keen focus on a few key must-have elements or characteristics. We believe that this focus is what has differentiated this initiative from past efforts. The team sought to develop a streamlined and consistent structure with common wording that is compliant with GCP and regulations. We heard of this need loud and clear from the investigator and site coordinator community. Endpoints were another area of focus, and the CPT team set out to ensure that each endpoint is mapped to a trial objective and aligned with CDISC TA standards where appropriate. Beyond the template itself, and with the future automated state in mind, all of our initiative work has been grounded in the 4 anchors shown on this slide: metadata, reuse, traceability, and automation. So now that I've given you some idea of what the Common Protocol Template is, let's now consider what it is not. The CPT is not a training document, nor is it a document for internal contracting of downstream activities within a sponsor organization. The CPT is also not designed to be an enrollment feasibility document, nor a substitute for a development plan, investigator's brochure, or statistical analysis plan. Finally, it is also very important to note that the CPT has not been created to meet the needs of just any possible reader, but rather it is designed just for investigator sites and regulatory reviewers. The CPT was developed with the participation of 17 member companies. The team consulted with an advisory committee with industry and regulatory representatives for early direction. Subsequently, the template content was then reviewed in detail by a number of stakeholders, including investigators and site coordinators, institutional review boards, contract research organizations, and even the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. Beginning in 2016, an important collaboration was established with the National Institutes of Health and FDA. The CPT team leveraged input from an NIH FDA public comment exercise and used that to make a number of important changes to the CPT to harmonize it with the NIH FDA template. Since its inception in 2015, the CPT has been downloaded over 5,900 times from the Transcelerate website. 16 Transcelerate member companies are implementing the template, and 2 more member companies are currently evaluating adoption. As was so important in the development of the template, user and member company feedback continues to be essential to us. We invite you to use the Talk to Us button on the CPT Assets page of the Transcelerate website to stay in touch with us. Now let's take a bird's eye view of our CPT journey, helping to move clinical trials from paper to a digital platform. Our initial 2 template releases were made in 2015 and established a basic Word edition as well as a robust implementation toolkit to enable adoption. 2016 saw release 3 and availability of a technology-enabled edition of the template to complement the basic Word edition. We also introduced guidance for authoring of amendments using the CPT. Release 4 in 2017 provided updates to those 2 CPT editions in alignment with the NIH FDA template. Additional therapeutic libraries were also introduced, as well as some enhancements to the technology features. Importantly, the team also demonstrated proof of concept regarding the potential for CPT to drive automation of CRS and traceability. Later in 2017, a second CPT release, Release 5, enabled disclosure of many protocol elements to clinicaltrials.gov and UDRA-CT and provided 5 new therapeutic libraries. 2018 has been another busy year for the team, as we've been focused on establishing a governance model to ensure sustainability of the template and on expanding opportunities for user and health authority engagement. In fact, the team is now heads down in the final stages of preparation for a 4Q template release. Our 2018 release will feature a number of additional capabilities, as well as new common statistical analysis plan and clinical study report templates to pave the way for automation and reuse of protocol content. In 2019 and beyond, we will continue to expand automation and reuse. So that wraps up our review of the CPT rationale, development, and benefits. Before I turn things over to my colleague Kirsten, we'd like to now ask for your participation in another live poll. Again, as Gloria reviewed at the top, your participation is voluntary. All responses will be anonymous, and we will share the answers only as a percentage of respondents. So at this time, help us out by giving us a little bit of information about how you author protocols at your company. If you will, please respond to the poll and tell us how many protocols does your company use?
Thanks, everyone. So far, we have about 70% of the folks on the phone have responded to the poll. It looks like about a third of people have one protocol template in use. About 28% have 2 or 3 protocol templates in use. And 19% have more than 3 templates, and 19% said that they're not sure how many templates are in use at their company. Thanks, everyone, for voting. All right. At this time, Kirsten Young is going to walk us through the CPT structure. Kirsten?
Sure. Thank you, Gloria. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Young. I'm a medical writing quality at Pfizer, and I'm going to walk you through today the structure of the Common Protocol template, showing you the core template as well as its associated libraries, and then showing you some of the basic functionality of the Word edition as well as the technology-enabled edition. So what does the CPT look like? The CPT is broken down into 3 main components. The first component being that of the core protocol backbone. This is where you're going to find the common level 1 and level 2 headings, as well as common text that should be used across all phases. The intent of this shell is to focus on our investigators and patients, focusing on our investigators and our study staff. The second component of the CPT is that of the libraries. Our libraries are broken down into 2 categories. We have participant libraries, which consist of the healthy volunteer, the patient, and the pediatric library. And then we also have therapeutic area specific libraries, where you can find endpoint definitions that are modeled for specific indications. The therapeutic area libraries and the patient libraries use a point-and-click method that helps to populate the core protocol backbone. In addition to that, you have the third component, which is your appendices. This is where you're going to find the non-study specific information, things such as your abbreviations or any country or company specific content. To help sustain the Common Protocol template, Transcelerate is currently working on a governance model to help drive the CPT into the future, and also to help make sure that there is a suite of materials that can help with implementation. So there are 2 Common Protocol template editions. There's the Basic Word edition and the Technology-Enabled edition. The Basic Word edition is just a document-based template that can be used across all phases and study types. It can be used as is, or companies may choose to modify. This version was introduced to the public in December of 2015. To build upon that, we've created the Technology-Enabled Edition. This is an MS Word-based template with add-ins. The main functionality of this template is to use a point and click where we can populate variables that can later be extracted and reused in downstream processes. This version of the template was released to the general public in June of 2016 and was built for Microsoft Windows usage. It's currently not compatible with Apple systems. So the Basic Word Edition. The Basic Word Edition is just that. It's a Word document where there's no installation needed. You can locate the Basic Word Edition on the Transcelerate's Common Protocol Template website, where you can click on the Common Protocol Template Tools and Resources button and see the blue bar indicating the Basic Word Edition template and guidelines. When you click on the plus button for that toolbar, you'll find the suite of materials. Here you'll see there's a step-by-step guide for use of the Basic Word Edition. There's the Basic Word Edition core template. There's a Common Protocol Template types of text and style conventions, which shows you the different color codings that are used within the CPT. And then you can also find the basic word formats for their participant and therapeutic area libraries. The intent of these templates is that you can save them to your desktop and start authoring the protocol. When you open the Basic Word Edition, you'll see it's pretty simplistic. The very first thing that we instruct authors to do is to go to their home menu and toggle the paragraph marker. Once that paragraph marker is toggled, you'll see the red instructional text populate within the document. This will help the authors in drafting their protocol. In addition to that, we have common text. To help point this out, it's careted between the start and end of common text. In addition to that, you'll also find example text, which also starts and ends with example text, and it's shown in green italicized font. So very simplistic in the use of the Basic Word Edition. So to build upon that, we introduced the Technology-Enabled Edition. So it's very similar to the Basic Word as far as the paper look, but it's quite different. The main functionality of this version is that we capture content, structured and unstructured, into variables where we're then able to export that information and reuse it in downstream processes. To navigate this template, on the left-hand side, you'll see there's the navigation pane where you'll see the common level 1 and level 2 headings. Across the top, you'll see there's the CPT menu bar. This is where you're able to add variables. You can convert and remove example text. You can pop out your instructional pane and also hide and view your CPT panel. The CPT panel is what you see going down the right-hand side of your screen. This is where you're able to select the libraries that you're going to use to help populate your shell. You'll also see below that the instructional text box, where as you navigate through the document on your level 1 and level 2 headings, the instructional text will change. Below that is the content tree view panel. This is where you'll see the different hierarchy of available content from your specific selected libraries. And finally, there's the preview content panel. Once you've chosen language that you're going to insert into your template, you can point and click on that content and it will populate into the variable. Once the content is in the variables, you're able to export those variables into XML or Excel formats for reuse in other processes. So a lot more functionality that's offered when using the Technology-Enabled Edition. So what is the value of using the Common Protocol templates, and why should sponsors adopt? Well, to start, there's the quality benefit. We've had 19 sponsored companies that have been tapped into to help develop the templates with input from regulators, sites, CROs, and IRBs. So all of that quality work has been done for you. In addition to that, we have the therapeutic area specific libraries that have been built based on sponsor best practices. Stakeholders have had the opportunity to suggest revisions. We've then taken those revisions and used that to maintain and update the CPT over time. The broad adoption will help to drive greater efficiencies for our investigators, sites, sponsors, and regulators, as well as our patients. As far as efficiency, our sponsors can spend less time on low-value customizations and also reduce the time on managing the template maintenance. The template is easier for authors to use and draft, and sponsors can choose to adopt in a phased approach. They can choose to use either the Word edition, the technology-enabled edition, or any of its components. As far as the compliance piece, the template is supported by the FDA, and we've had health authority feedback to date that's been unanimously positive. So the more harmonized we are by using the quality, efficiency, and compliance piece, the greater the benefit the pharmaceutical industry will gain by using the Common Protocol template. So with that, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I've just showed you what the CPT looks like and the benefits of using it. We're going to go through some of the available resources that are available to you and your organizations when implementing the CPT. So each individual company or sponsor chooses whether and how they want to implement. It can be done by introducing the CPT in phase, by the use of the different libraries, by the use of the Word or the technology-enabled edition, or maybe it's just the use of the organizational structure and the content only. You can see down the right, we've kind of broken out some of those components for you so that sponsors and companies can select which path they want to use. And then also, as far as the rollout timelines, some organizations choose to roll out slowly through pilots, but then others choose to do hard cutover dates or anywhere in between. But it's just, we stress the more harmonized we are and the more components that we use, the greater the efficiency and the greater the use of the Common Protocol template. As far as the resources that are available to you, again, if you go out to the Transcelerate website and click on the Common Protocol template page, you'll find the basic Word edition and its associated libraries. You'll also find that technology-enabled edition where you're able to capture the protocol level metadata and reuse it and extract it for downstream processes. And you're also able to find the implementation toolkit, which is a suite of materials tailored for different audiences. In the next slide, I'm going to go into some of those, some of the materials that are available to you. So to start, we have an executive summary. This is a brief summary of the rationale for CPT and its value proposition. We have the CPT communication slides. This is a slide deck of the background and explanation for the CPT. We have a guidance for use document, which is a user guide tailored for the technology-enabled edition that also contains video demonstrations for some of the functionality that's available in that version. We have a release highlights document, which is a slide deck, as well as a track change version from the latest update, as well as a frequently asked questions document. You'll also find a mapping table exercise, which allows you to map your company's current protocol templates to the CPT. You'll find stakeholder maps, which allow you to assess the impact of implementing the CPT with the different stakeholder groups within your organization. You'll also find a text color guide, which shows the explanation of the color coding that's used within the CPT, as well as the available partial list of resources that authors should take into consideration when drafting their protocol. So as you can see, there are a lot of materials that are available when implementing the CPT within your organization. And my final slide that I would just like to touch on is that we are getting ready for a future release. It's targeted for November of 2018. We've listened to different sponsored companies and taken some more best practices and have included some more nice functionality. So to start, there's the ability to allow for co-authoring. We've also introduced track change improvements. We have the ability to identify, remove, and convert variable text. There's the ability to add and remove the amendment-related sections within the Common Protocol template. We've improved the panel for better visibility when you're inserting text into the shell. We've also have the ability now to add rows of variables into the study interventions table. In addition to that, we have 2 new libraries. There's the cardiovascular safety library, as well as a vaccines library. We've updated some of the Common Protocol template core content, specifically with the EU clinical trial regulation analysis and alignment. We've also have the ability to enable the use in device protocols. And we've created a more robust statistical content, which also includes the use of estimands. The technology advances that we've included is the ability for the libraries to be stored in central locations and that users can work on those files offline. And also that the previous versions of the CPT can now be viewed in read-only mode. So a lot of new features and nice things that will come in this next release. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Stacy Teagan and Etsu Asaka, who will walk us through a question and answer session.
Thank you, Kirsten, and thank you, Mark, for that presentation on the Common Protocol template. I'd like to invite all attendees to ask questions of the panel by entering your questions in the questions pane you'll find in your GoToWebinar screen. We do have a couple questions that were submitted through registration, and I'll direct the first one to Etsu. Etsu, there was a question around translation, and we understand that the CPT has been translated into Japanese. Could you tell us a bit about how that translation was accomplished and where one might find that version of CPT?
Yes, Japanese translation, there are 2 Word documents available now. One is the core protocol backbone with appendices. The other is the patient library. This is the representative from 12 companies of Transcelerate members prepared the Japanese translation of it. Yes, here it's placed on the Transcelerate website. Yes, look in the slides. On the website, click on the Our Work tab, then click on Our Work in Clinical Development. Yes, and scroll down to scroll down to CPT tools and resources. And yes, and select click here for translated resources. So when opening, there are 2 Word documents.
Thank you, Etsu. Kirsten, a question for you. Are there multiple versions of CPT that would address different study phases or different study types? And then to tag into that, Kirsten, would you recommend CPT for international global trials, or is it more suited for domestic single center trials?
Sure. So the Common Protocol template, there's one version. It's intended to be used across all phases and study types. The intent is that when you're authoring or when sites are using the protocol template, that they can customize according to the needs for each organization.
Excellent, thank you. Mark, a question for you. Can the CPT be customized? And to tag on to that, how much flexibility is allowed? What components are allowed to be customized?
Well, I guess the short answer is yes, it can be customized. There are no restrictions on how sponsors can modify or customize the template. However, as Kirsten shared, the value proposition, the more that you retain and not customize, the greater the value that you will see from the use of the template, and that we will see really as an ecosystem. All of the downstream users of protocols, the sites, regulators, IRBs, the more that sponsors stick to the commonality there, the greater the value for all those stakeholders. Some basic things that we'd like to suggest that sponsors not modify are as follows. First of all, level 1 and 2 headings. We really need to stick with that. We've gotten a good agreement from all those stakeholders that they'd like to find the same information in the same places in protocols coming from different sponsors. So adhering to those level 1 and 2 headings, keeping things in the same place, will really be a great benefit to those downstream users. Also foundational for reusing content and that traceability we're talking about. Another key element of the template design is that connection between endpoints and objectives. So it's really enabling you to have consistency and quality at a program level within your enterprise, and really allowing you to ensure that you're not collecting data that isn't directly going to support one of your trial objectives. You will prevent you from having so-called orphan endpoints. And again, really foundational for that traceability concept. We think that the use of the libraries unmodified is also of great benefit. We've spent a lot of time with different sponsor companies harmonizing endpoint definitions and aligning them with TA standards that are out there, including the TALs, the TA user group definitions, and a lot of the data standards that we built into the template also are going to provide a lot of value if not modified. I think a couple of other concepts, really we've tried to simplify and streamline the template sections. So again, take advantage of the work that the team has done with input from a lot of different sources to simplify and reduce the length of protocols, and to really pull together the sections of the protocol in a nice schedule of activities. Another thing that we did is place that up front in the template itself so that it would be easily accessed. This was in response to a lot of stakeholder feedback, and keeping the schedule of activities short without footnotes. So these are some of the elements of the design of the template that we really would like to see folks take up and not modify, not customize.
Thank you, Mark. Kirsten, the next question will be for you. What are some of the issues or deficiencies found in the Common Protocol template?
Sure. So we've listened to different sponsor companies and companies in general, just some of the issues that they've run into, and we've tried to take some of those changes and address them in the next version. So some of the things that were issues that we're looking at addressing is, creating that vaccines library. So that's a new library with, different information that's been needed in developing the Common Protocol template or populating it. So we've created that content in a vaccines library that will be offered in that next version. We also have improvements in the content to allow for the use in devices and also combination trials. So that's one thing that you'll see was an issue that we've tried to address. We've also listened to the fact that the ICH draft guidance has been out for SMN, so we've expanded the statistical content in the CPT to address those issues. And also the technology-enabled edition user interface, we've tried to implement some improvements there with the Common Protocol template user panel so that it's a little bit more user-friendly. And also, I guess I would finally say the SAP and CSR templates and, trying to get that content reuse up and running. So to try to identify what that content should be that we would take from the protocols to help populate the SAP and CSR.
Thank you, Kirsten. It sounds like there's a lot coming with CPT. I'd like to encourage those on the phone, if you have additional areas for improvement, additional areas you'd like to see Transcelerate work on, so please submit those through the Transcelerate website. Mark, I'll turn to you for a question, and Kirsten, perhaps you can add your thoughts as well. For the member companies who have adopted, what struggles do they see, and what do you recommend they do to enhance the change acceptance within their organization?
So I guess from my own experiences, I can say that I think maybe, obviously the biggest is the resistance to change. Nobody wants to change. Everyone's used and comfortable with what they're currently doing. So that's probably the biggest barrier that I feel, at least for myself and within our organization, that we tend to see as far as that resistance. Also, in addition to that, I would say that in order to implement effectively, you need to make sure that your organization does have that top-down sponsorship and that your senior leaders are on board with the adoption of the CPT.
Yeah, I think the sponsorship component is really important, and I think also the approach that whomever is leading the implementation at your company really needs to take the approach with the team that you challenge the team to understand why you couldn't perhaps adopt certain elements of the template. I think in all of our organizations, as Kirsten said, there's resistance to change. People have written paragraphs and they're really happy with that language and they feel that that's the only language that will work for your company. So the leader of implementation, I think, can be successful if they really challenge the team to say, why couldn't we use a little bit of a different wording if there are going to be benefits from using common wording? So I think just really the approach that leadership of the project as well as the sponsor takes is important. Also, I think recognize we have a lot of implementation assets available in a toolkit to help you with adoption at your company. I would say take advantage of those materials, make sure that your team members are really understanding all about the template and the many aspects of it, particularly the value proposition and the benefits, the impacts to stakeholders that we've talked about here today. Make sure your team is really aware of all that, because I think that may help convince people of the value of making a change to CPT.
I think the last thing that I would add to that is also the technology piece. If your organization is implementing the technology-enabled tool, to just make sure that you have BT on board and the right support that you need when implementing a tool such as this.
Actually, that's a great tie-in to another question. Could you speak to some of the benefits of the technology-enabled edition? What values can you get from that? Kirsten, do you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, sure. So, I think the main benefit is the fact that when you're using the technology-enabled edition, all of your content is being captured in variables. So, in order to reuse that content, the technology-enabled edition is the template that should be used. That's where you're going to be able to export that content and then, use that in the statistical analysis plans and the clinical study reports and downstream processes as we move forward into the years to come.
And hopefully over time, we'll see other organizations like IRBs and health authorities taking more and more of this information in electronic format as well. I think, and the end result may allow us to develop drugs more quickly and get them to patients sooner.
Excellent. A question has come in. Do you have any plans to gather country-specific requirements for CPT? For example, specific rules about protecting privacy in a region?
That's a good question, and I think we have heard of specific requirements for countries and regions, and some of those things we've built in to the text. I think it's a little tricky because it's hard to knowable, these things up front. So I think the answer to that is we will try to work things in as we can, but also to say that we look forward to continued dialogue with all of you out there in the countries and regions to bring things to our attention, where there are gaps in the template and we can address them.
Excellent.
Again, keep in mind, the template or the protocols that are produced by any sponsor are the responsibility of that sponsor. So the template is still just that, it's a template. So if there's something that you find that isn't suitable or isn't going to be acceptable in your country or region, by all means, you need to make that adjustment.
Here's an interesting question. What is a good way for an organization to measure the impact of implementing? Mark?
Measurements, metrics, always a challenge. I think the short answer to this one is it kind of depends on what you already are measuring. If you want to measure the impact of something, you need to know how that something is functioning before you make the change that you're making. So I would say, what is your organization measuring now with respect to how you are authoring protocols? And perhaps you would continue that same measurement to see what the impact of CPT was on that particular part of the process. This is something that our team is also continuing to debate and work on, and we will share thoughts and recommendations as we have them. Some sponsors have looked at protocol length as a measurement. Maybe the CPT is allowing you to write shorter protocols, reducing repetition, redundancy in different sections, perhaps. Another thing you might want to think about is how quickly are you able to create a first draft of your protocol? Is the template with a lot of the common text pre-filled, is that going to allow your organization to get to a first draft of the protocol more quickly than when you may have been writing things from scratch or from a blank page? Something else that people talk about is, are we improving the quality of protocols to the extent that we may have fewer amendments? That's another thing you might want to think about. Personally, I think that most of our amendments are not due to poor quality protocols, but rather to the pace of change in our industry and in the medical field. But that is something else that you might think about measuring as well. So just some ideas, but again, I think it really depends on what your process is internally for writing protocols.
Thank you, Mark. Etsu, can I ask you a question or ask one of you? Has PMDA, the Japanese Health Authority, seen CPT, and do they have any feedback on it?
I have heard that PMDA is interested in the CPT effort. Actually, PMDA has been informed of the Japanese translation webpage.
Thank you. And what is Transcelerate doing to encourage notification of the availability of the Japanese version within the Japanese community?
Notification Japanese community. Actually, we have already taken steps to spread information about CPT. We have informed the Japan Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association about CPT, and the association has informed there are about 70 member companies.
That's very exciting. Thank you, Etsu. We have about 5 minutes left in the broadcast. If anyone has additional questions, we ask you to please submit them via the questions panel. Regarding the technology-enabled edition, does it require any specific software? Kirsten, can you speak to that question?
No, there's no specific software that's needed for implementing the Common Protocol template, and it can be used within different existing environments. And then as far as the libraries, currently organizations would just need to figure out where those libraries would be stored. But going forward in the next release, that is something that has been addressed, and we will be able to store those on SharePoint. So yeah, the short answer is no.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Gloria, I'll turn it back over to you to close it out.
Why don't we close it out then? We'll have one last poll then. We would ask everyone to please answer. This one has to do with, based on the information that you saw here today, how valuable do you feel implementing the CPT within your company would be? Do you think it would be no value, a little value, a moderate value, or a lot of value? So if you could use the polling functionality on the webinar to answer that question, we would appreciate it. We'd like to hear what you thought of the webinar tonight. So it looks like about 50% of the folks on the phone have voted so far. Oh, it's up to 60%. So thank you for voting. And it looks like about 6% said a little value, 28% said moderate value, and 55% said a lot of value, and 16% said that they're not sure. It sounds like they'll need to do some additional investigation. So thank you very much for your attention tonight. Thank you, Mark and Kirsten and Stacy and Etsu. We appreciate your time. And thank you to everyone on the phone today. We hope you found this helpful. And we'll be posting the recorded version with a PDF of the slides on the Transcelerate website shortly. Thank you.